Finally, could I ask you to describe the cycle of creativity that you've developed with Charles Landry and worked with over the past 20 years?
Yes. The cycle of creativity was a very specific concept, and I can tell you exactly why and where it emerged. It was one of those light bulb moments. We were working in a town called Huddersfield. Shortly before, we actually persuaded the European Commission to give us rather a lot of money to develop a Creative Town initiative as a pilot project in urban creativity. And we were finding it really difficult to persuade one particular key partner to get involved in the concept. The local university could not see what was in it for them, why they should join in a project with a bunch of artists and entrepreneurs and technology people. And we said in order to persuade them, and indeed anybody else, why they should opt into something bigger, into something structural around the town, we need a model. We need a model to explain what we're trying to do. How are we trying to turn creativity into a resource? And this is how the cycle of creativity emerged, a 5-point program. Point number 1 is ideas generating capacity. How do you take an average, ordinary, post-industrial town where people, for most of their lives, have been told, keep your mouth shut, keep your head down, and do your work? How do you go from that to a place where suddenly you're saying, we want your ideas, we need your ideas, be more creative, be more imaginative? So a lot of it was about kickstarting, a lot of it was about 1 or 2 quick wins, raising people's levels of aspiration, experiments, radical art events, debates, controversy, awards, anything that's going to get people saying and doing things a little bit out of their comfort zone. That's great, it's very exciting, but it's a puff and it doesn't last for long. So very quickly you've got to take people onto another level where you can start to help them turn some of those ideas into some practical realities. So you get into that prototyping stage. So stage 2 is turning ideas into practice. We developed around our media centre, we call it, a hub of activity, business support mechanisms, mentoring, incubators, business angels, short-term funding, and again, this stage, too much funding can be as bad as no funding at all, so it's just allowing people to try things out, stage 2. But that's a town full of creative people is not a creative town, because at that stage they're all like that. They're all completely blinkered, obsessed by their own project and by their own creativity. But actually they're not looking to see who's on the left or who's on the right. They're not realising that actually the woman in the office next door might have the answer to the problem that they can't get around, or the guy across the corridor might have an outlet into a market that they've never even conceived of. So it's about getting people to open up, to share knowledge. And we know in creativity that there's a fear of sharing knowledge because you know there are some sharks out there. So it's about building confidence, building networks. It's also about knowledge. It's about knowing yourself. It's incredible how little many towns know about themselves, about their own creative economy. We were one of the first places in Huddersfield to start mapping our creative economy and understanding who's doing what and how, with what frequency. So that's stage 3, networking and circulating. Stage 4 is the sexy one. This is where you start turning it into projects, festivals, buildings, studios, galleries, workshops, equipment, kit, stuff, spending money. People love that, they can see it, they can touch it. Politicians love it too. The problem is, stage 4 is where most people want to start. They tend to forget the first 3 stages that actually got you there. And this is why I found the cycle useful. to get people to focus not just on the sexy, big box stuff, but how you actually get there. Stage 4 is projects. But stage 5 is often overlooked too, which is how you connect all of that to a market, to an audience, to a clientele, to whoever you're doing it for. And so much of what we did at stage 5 in terms of dissemination and markets was giving people a concept of what their creative assets were, who might be interested in them, and how to connect. And we created an organisation called CEDA, the Creative Industries Development Agency, which 10 years on is now working worldwide in America, in the Far East, but still based in Huddersfield, building on those competencies. But what I've described to you so far is linear. There's 5 points on a line. Where's the cycle in all of this? That's the link from 5 back to 1 again. That's the point where in these post-industrial towns you've got a lot of sceptical people. In fact, the majority of people are apathetic or sceptical. Very few people get involved in the start of anything, and they're often seen as crazy, as naive, and the majority of people will quite happily stand back and say, no, this creative cycle, it'll never work here. But then they see that it does work for somebody else, and did you see that? It worked. Worked for him. Well, if it worked for him, it could work for me too. And that's where you start to release a lot of the pent-up, locked-in energy in these towns. And that's why I believe in cultural resources, in mainly indigenous solutions and indigenous resources. Yes, you need ideas, you need stimulation from the outside, but in most towns, most of the solutions and most of the assets that they need to solve their problems are locked in internally. And the idea of the cycle is about unlocking that, because at some point your money is going to run out. You're going to need to generate new, more sustainable assets. And that's why the cycle, I think, worked for us in Huddersfield and has worked for other places too.
Thanks very much, Phil.